Hello, everybody, and welcome in as I get situated here. This is another edition of really the founding segment of Hojo Squad. It is really trying to find that story and understand that pathway of what first brings people into architecture, but especially what was that path like just after graduation? Because at least for myself and my friends around me, like thankfully I had my friends, because other than that, I was flying blind, and really my friends and I were all just flying blind, and we don't do a great job of telling our stories and documenting them in a interesting and a pretty roundabout way. And I became super interested in what is that path like, because college ends and then boom, what's like, is there even a playbook out there to go off of? Is there anything to be able to use as a guidance? And it hit me, I have to get everybody's stories around me, because it's so crucial what the individual goes through. Yeah, there's stats and whatnot, but I also noticed how each one of my friends had a completely different experience, even though they were even at the same office at times. And today we have a new friend of mine, Ryan, who I've actually not met in person, only on Discord and Hojo Squad and all of our incredible segments. He always has incredible feedback. It's always so on point, and I can always just tell how much he pays attention. But other than that, I actually don't know that much about this guest. So, Brian, let's kick it off. I know we went to the same school and we know a bunch of the same people, but let's step it back. Where are you from? Where were you raised? And just what is that backstory?
Man, it's we were talking about it a little bit before going live, just this adjacency that we've kind of had without actually meeting each other, and it's always a funny reminder to me how much overlap there is and how much proximity there is just in this industry and within Dallas. And I know you're not in Dallas anymore, but it's always still remarkable how frequently I find these connections popping up in my life through mediums that I would never kind of anticipated, right? And so it's been really fun to kind of jump in and participate in the few shows that I've been on with y'all, and I appreciate the kind words about the feedback and the thoughts and everything like that. Getting into it, man, I feel like my journey of where I'm from is rather complex anymore. I think at this point I'm a Texan. I've been down here for 16 years, but I lived in South Dakota and Minnesota for 8 and 8. Split it pretty equally between Minneapolis and then two towns in South Dakota, one called Sioux Falls and one called North Sioux City, which, funnily enough, I work with a girl that grew up in South Sioux City, which is just across the border in Nebraska, which you don't see too often. Now I consider myself a Texan, right? It's eclipsed the amount of time I've spent anywhere else. But I think that there is a lot of that upbringing in the Midwest that kind of comes to the table for me when I kind of throw myself into the industry.
How so? And would you say it would differ from that Texas upbringing, and how?
Man, so much. The towns that I grew up in South Dakota, um, were pretty small. Sioux City is larger. Sioux Falls is the largest town in South Dakota. But most of the time that I spent growing up there was in pretty small towns, like 3,000 or smaller. I lived in a
Oh,
town of
wow.
75 people for a few years at one point. And, my parents split when I was pretty young, so I was constantly kind of like moving along to a few different
Oh,
places.
yeah.
Um, but it was a very rural upbringing in comparison to my Texas upbringing, right? There's just
Right.
two completely different paces. I moved down here in the last month of my junior year of high school, and I went from a school that had a graduating class of 40 people and graduated with a class of 400 people. So the factor shift there, the
Yeah.
culture shift there, was massive. And I always say that I'm very grateful that I learned to drive down here because the pace is
Yeah.
very, very different.
Right.
But I think that brings a lot of perspective as well. Um, I feel that growing up in the Midwest and the environments that I grew up in, they were much more small, close knit communities that you got a pretty strong sense of belonging out of much more naturally, just due to proximity and fewer number of people. Like you don't have as many options, right?
Right.
Is
Right.
maybe like a bad way to phrase it, but you don't have as many options of people you can interact with. Down here, you can kind of like pick and choose, and like there's people down here that'll like meet somebody and be like, no, I never want to do anything with them again. They don't ever have to do anything with them again.
Right. In small towns, you have to be nice because, like, are you gonna be mean to the same person every single day? Like,
you
never.
get known as the mean guy.
Yeah, exactly. And run out of town pretty quickly.
Yeah, or you become a hermit up on the hill and you live in the rickety old house and everybody knows to avoid your property because you'll get yelled at.
Right.
I had neighbors like that I very much knew not to go by their house because I would get yelled at just walking by. And I know that exists down here. That's not to say it doesn't. But it feels much more distinct in that sense, right? Down here it's so much more urban. And the growth that I've seen down here in the last 15 years is remarkable on its own. But I think having that kind of blend of rural and urban, um, really, I think helps me bring a lot of perspective into either side of it, right? Where when we see a lot of problems that kind of come up on the news around like rural conditions or urban conditions, it's a lot easier for me to step back and I think add some perspective that says, well, this is why this is occurring, or well, we could do these things better, or like, well, like everybody's saying this is the answer, but like we're not considering how this is going to impact these other things. Because a lot of the time now there's like a very unnecessarily harsh divide between the two.
That's so interesting. It, and I'm thinking because the small town only has so many people, it can't specialize as much, and so it must be much more holistic. Where a city, you can specialize out and fractionate out and become distant parts of the water supply or the food supply or the labor supply, on and on.
I think to an extent, yes, but I would actually argue that a lot of small towns are highly specialized.
Yeah, that's true.
I think a lot of small towns, like, so many of the towns that I grew up around, there's hundreds of towns in a very small area up in South Dakota, where really you have a post office and maybe a town hall, maybe a gas station, and probably don't have a grocery store or anything else like that because it's a town of necessity so that you can
Yeah.
bring crops to a centralized location that has a train track that you can ship out, right? A lot of kind of stuff like that. I would say that there is a lot more monotony in the specialization of small towns. In a large urban environment, you have the advantage of being able to bring a lot of specialization into a single location. But in small towns, you don't really have as much opportunity for that. And you can see that, I think, a lot of the time in just geographical location. Like big towns a lot of time are popping up along like rivers, something that they can use for trade or used to be able to use for trade a lot more effectively. Much more friendly terrain for train tracks, stuff like that, right? Where it'd be easy to add a small stop to a small town that's kind of in the middle of nowhere that has a train track running through, because there's resources there that people outside of the region desire, and you can make a quick stop and grab the resources and go. But that's kind of the only draw to that zone, right? Economically, you also have the advantage of big cities because you have that massive amount of focused specialization in one location. You're able to bring so many different kind of trades together that then start to benefit and grow off of each other as well.
And it's that kind of insight that truly living in a smaller town brings, because I just have not. I've only been in pretty large metroplexes I've visited, and I've spent but that's not the same as experiencing it day in and day out.
Yeah.
Of, well, yup, that's Bobby Sue at the gas station, and that's the only gas station, and they're out of Coke till Tuesday, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a very different experience.
Right. When y'all moved, were you happy at the time? Were you excited? Like, what was that experience?
I didn't want to be here, honestly. My dad still lives up there, and I moved down here with my mom, stepdad, and immediate family. And when I first moved down here, I didn't want to be here. Like I had a year left of high school. Terrible fucking time.
The worst.
The worst time to move. Like I was thrown into a school system 10 times the size of what I was used to. At a much more intense level of severity in a lot of ways. Everything down here is just such a massive competition, man. When I was growing up there, I wrestled, I played football, I played trumpet in the band. I would actually play our halftime shows at our football games, and so I would play, run, grab my trumpet, march out with the band, play the show, run back, all in my pads.
You were that guy.
You don't do that down here, dude. No, it wasn't just me though. It was like half the football team.
Everybody, right?
It was because
like you probably had to, right?
You had to. Everybody played offense and defense. Everybody did every sport. Everybody was everywhere. And then you come down here and it's like, okay, well, we have 3 JV squads and a varsity squad, and also we have the same system in band, and everybody's competing for ULI points.
Right.
It's like, man, this was way more fun when it was casual.
Exactly. And now it's all about scholarships, because real big money is on that line. If it's music, sports, dance, whatever it is, because there's just frankly a lot more people, so a lot more schools, and then a lot more cash flow to help, people out. And in Texas, I mean, education is not always the way out. Football and sports often is for a bunch of people. And they get quite trapped in it too, of like players then not focusing at school at all, and then just end up being really dumb, because our school makes you dumb already. But then if you aren't even doing anything, you can only get so smart on your own, like in a school, screwing off. And so in that big shift, you went from playing all the sports and all the stuff to doing what?
Man, I did band I think for a semester, and then I saw how serious football was down here, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I don't want to do that anymore. Like that's like a completely different level of
Yeah, it's
sport
nuts.
compared to down here. And I want to. I'm not gonna say the kids down here are bigger. I was definitely smaller at the time. I was probably like 5'8". I'm 6'1" now, so like I shot up quite a bit towards the end there.
Yeah,
But like you've got like the farm boys up there. They're like working in the fields from like 8 years old. And so like
right.
they're sizable. You have the same thing down here. There's just so many more people down here. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
it's a it's a strength in numbers type scenario in some ways.
Oh, of course, because then like the more people brings in m- more cash, and then better coaches, better equipment, better times, better field, better feeling of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try extra hard because I have the ice bath, or whatever it is that actually isn't that much, but has incredible benefits. And in high school, it in moving as a junior, a lot of high schoolers have stuff planned out. Like I'm gonna go here, be married here, have a car, but a bunch of them are also not planners. Were you more of a planner, and did moving like screw up your plans in like college or anything, or like what happened there?
Honestly, not really. It was a little bit of a different vibe up there for the most part. Um, moving down, I didn't really have plans to go to college at that point. And even coming out of senior year of school here, I was still kind of like, well, like I might go, I might not. When I was taking classes up there in my junior year, I was enrolled in a programming course. And I don't know if you ever tried programming. I can't do it personally.
Brutal.
It, it sucks the life out of me. I can't sit there and just stare at the words all day. Which, is kind of funny because, the more I work, the more I realize I do effectively the same thing, just in kind of a different format, right?
Yeah.
So it's really like, what flavor do you want? Um, but there really wasn't strong college plans for me kind of moving down here at first. Um, I had different thoughts on what I was going to do. I thought about taking a year off. I was pretty heavily considering the military as well at the
Wow.
time. I didn't go that route, but I had a lot of family members that were in the military, lots of uncles. My grandfather was in the Navy, was an engineer at Honeywell for a long while afterwards. And had a lot of inspiration from him to, maybe kind of do something similar. So that was like, okay, well, maybe I'll go like join the Marines or something, and then from there, think about college afterwards. Because
Right,
I didn't really
right.
know like what I wanted to do or what I was interested in, right? Because
Is
again,
it?
like,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go.
Um, was it up there? Like, there isn't really a large coverage of like vocations, right?
Yeah.
There's not a lot of variety in the things that you can do and study at a lot of the schools up there. At least there wasn't at the time when I was up there. Um, when I was up there, we had the programming class, and that was like a little bit more out there as far as high school electives go. But a lot of it, there was like 4-H club and stuff like that. And you could have like some classes that went into stuff more oriented towards like farming and agriculture.
Hmm.
A lot of like shop classes, wood shop, stuff like that as well. Stuff which exists at schools down here. But when I moved down here, the high school that I went to had like entire lines and branches that you could follow that would take you down a career route.
Wow.
When I moved down here, they didn't have a programming class at my high school. Oddly enough, it surprises me now, but they didn't have one at the time. And so they placed me into an AutoCAD class because they were like, oh, this is the closest that we think we have for this. And so I got placed in an AutoCAD class. And from
Wow.
there, like took all the classes for the architecture program after that because I was like, this shit's cool.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I'm glad I let you keep on going because I had a feeling you would answer that question I was about to ask of like, well, was there anything else, over? But that's awesome. It's so interesting how where you are and what's around you affects you. That's like really all you have, and it's such a random luck of the draw that you can be experienced or move. So was that the first time you heard of architecture, even the word?
I'm gonna say no. It was probably the first time I was, let's say, like awakened to it as like a career
Mm,
opportunity. Um,
mm,
but it wasn't something that I really had given thought prior, right? Um, again, my grandfather, he was an engineer for Honeywell, and so like he had done a lot of stuff like that. He would work on houses for Habitat for Humanity.
mm,
I have an uncle that has his own construction company, another that makes cabinets, and tons and tons of people in my family own farms. And so there was always this kind of element of making present in my life, right? There was always
mm,
this connection to construction and fabrication in some way that was really kind of always persistent around me. But it wasn't ever really anything that I considered in the lens of, oh, I want to be an architect, right? That
mm.
never really came up because, again, like in those towns, like the role of this is a stance that I hold quite firmly, but the role of an architect is a very luxurious position. Like when I think about like
Yes.
my career and where my career could take me, unless I am going to go work for a firm or create my own firm that does like high end custom residential, and then I've got to fight for clients really, really hard to be successful in that. There's really only like 20 cities in the US that I think I could have like a strong career in, and really maybe like 10 if I want it to be like a good, healthy career for me. Because once I go out to, T South Dakota with all 2,000 people that they have out there, they're not really fighting for the nicest architecture in the world for their little strip mall. They're pretty functional when it comes to those things. So it wasn't really anything that was ever considered again as like, oh yeah, I want this to be a career, because it didn't really exist up there in a capacity that it was like, oh, I could make this a career. Really, the
Mm,
closest was like, oh, that's a really nice house. I would love to make my own house, right? Or like, oh man, this house is super cool. I would love to do these things. And frankly, like the beginning of it is probably a mix of one, like how cool would it be to make my own house, and two, man, did you know you can make your own maps in Counter-Strike? Like
uh,
it's the mix
uh,
of those two things of like, okay, well,
right.
like I can kind of start to put things together and make my own.
That's so interesting. Maps in Counter-Strike, because it's it is that gamification of construction that puts us in it. For myself, the best video game ever, Roller Coaster Tycoon. No, I'm joking, but
Oh, yeah, that
it
too.
was it was that in Age of Empires that I was like, I mean, Age of Empires isn't so much building, but you're building civilizations per se
It's
in a
it's
gaming.
it's really urban planning.
Right, exactly. And also it it hit me growing up. My family is very Catholic, and my favorite part of the Bible was always in the very back with the maps of all the events that happened. It's instead of like the whole Bible. I was like, oh, these maps are so cool, and I would spend like time on that instead of like anything else. And but that's so interesting how the games and then just that high school not having programming, but they had AutoCAD. And some guidance counselor, bless their soul, was like, that's the same, right? You know? Auto
Yeah.
programming, it's on a screen, right? I mean, but it's very, very different, and it's interesting how that just opened up. And so, was it in high school, or when was that first time you were like, I'm gonna take this seriously? I'm gonna find the school. I'm gonna ba 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 ba. Did you go straight to college out after high school, or what happened there?
I did a little bit, but again, like I really didn't want to go. I took some community college courses right afterwards. But I'm gonna back up a little bit because when I was in high school, I got placed in that AutoCAD class, and my teacher, her name is Kim Card. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. Um, she helped me so much and she guided me so much as this awkward kid moving into this city 10 to 20 times bigger than anywhere he had lived previously, and
Oh,
just wanted to tinker with this stuff on the computer that he hadn't gotten a chance to be exposed to before, right? And so she
right.
really helped foster that. And so I ended up taking, this AutoCAD course with her. And then I took another course with her later that I think it was just around like modeling and like 3ds Max. And
Hmm.
then another one that was supposed to be an AutoCAD course. It was like Architecture 2, I think. It was supposed to be an AutoCAD course. And this was like 2008, 2009, right? And Revit was out. And I'm like, well, I want to play with Revit. And so she was like, okay, yeah, go play with Revit. And she had given us a couple different projects. And, I was just kind of messing with it on my own time as well. And I like designed out this house with all this crazy, wacky topography on like a cliff or something like that. And it's like, man, this is like pretty fun. Um, and she gives us our semester project, and it is to help design a third high school for Rockwall ISD, right?
Hmm.
And we get paired with some partners, and we do that, and we present our designs, and eventually we ended up presenting our designs to the principal of Rockwall Heath High School, the school I went to. And from there, we ended up presenting it to the Rockwall ISD school board in the city and stuff like that as well.
Oh wow,
Um, so it was really like
that's so cool.
it was really awesome.
As a senior, like,
As a senior, yeah, yeah,
yeah, because in your eyes, that's a legit meeting, and for the most part, it is.
yeah.
It is all on the line. And then what happened?
Well, you're spot on with that because it really felt like serious business because there was the biggest meeting we had with them was a presentation to the school board at this big function that had like 100 people at it. And like we were like presenting our project that we did for this class, and I was just like, okay, this is kind of cool. I don't really know what I'm getting into, but this is kind of cool. And it kind of stuck a little bit from that point. It kind of just got ingrained. It's like, okay, well, I think I want to
Wow.
be an architect. And I'm a very, very, very lucky person with that, right? Like I was legitimately just kind of like luck of the draw. Like that counselor was like, all right, architecture. It's like I got the sorting hat from Harry Potter.
Right,
you
right.
know? They're just like, yeah, this
That's
guy's doing this.
sometimes they just know, and sometimes it's just luck, you know?
Yeah,
Holding
it
on.
genuinely is.
Yeah. a- And I just wish education experienced or exposed kids to a bunch of m- more experiences vocationally, because they just don't know till they try it. And in that experience, especially of it, essentially performing in front of that many people, were you nervous at all? Because you've always spoken extremely well. Has that come naturally? Have you learned it?
Oh man, I'm sure I was nervous. I'm nervous every time I have to like present something, man. Like,
Or
even in all of the biggest meetings and juries and like everything like that, there's an element there of just nerves that I can never shake. And so I'll get in and it's just like, okay, I can do this, I can do this. And I'm glad that it always comes off like I'm confident and comfortable, because internally I'm just like shaking. I'm like, I can do it, it's fine, I can do it. Um, but that's not ever how it feels at the time, you know? And so in that meeting, I'm positive I was nervous as hell.
Yeah.
I that's God, 2008. That's going on 15 years ago at this point. So it's harder to remember the exact feelings in that moment. There's been a lot between here and then. But man, I have no doubt I was nervous as hell.
Right, right. And it's so interesting. You basically spoke about what that inner dialogue was in just positive affirmations, because that is the biggest skill out there. And it's all starts inward and then moves outward. If it's, oh, I'm going to fail, oh, I suck, blah, 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 blah. Bro, I was on my way to a jury. It was junior year. Doesn't matter. And I heard myself tell myself, "You suck. It'll go horrible. You're gonna stutter. Blah blah blah." And I just laughed. I was like that's what I'm like saying to myself. Like, come on now, no, that's just like okay, whatever, you know. And it'll go how it goes, you know. And but the question is, where did that positivity come from? Was it upbringing or something having to be learned in spite of it?
Um, I think it's a mix of both, right? Um, I think in a lot of ways it's a necessity, like it's a survival skill. Um, I come from pretty humble means. My family was never really well off. My dad, when my parents were together, my dad was a he would work the line and eventually became a manager for a company that made like labels for different like bottles and stuff like that. My mom was working in a
Mm-hmm.
gas station, and when they split, my dad kind of stayed that path, and my mom ended up going and working IT for a computer company called Gateway,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up meeting my stepdad there. But we were always, kind of living in like a house that had a bedroom for the girls and a bedroom for me, and
Right.
ideally a bedroom for mom also, but it wasn't always the case. But like things got better, right?
Right. Right.
And now they're way better. But I think that kind of moved down here, that jump from 40 to 400, so to speak. Um, that was a necessity for survival, or as like, okay, well, these are the circumstances, and I can either do or I cannot do, but one of them is a way better option. And I think that's an attitude almost forged in the fire, right? Um,
Right.
there was a lot of time when I was working in the service industry. I used to serve tables and bartend and like train different servers. And first day anybody would come in, I'd always just you're always supposed to have them like follow you and shadow you and not like interact with guests and take tables and
Right.
stuff like that. And I was always kind of like, fuck it, no, like that's not, we're not doing that. You're gonna take this table, I'm gonna watch you, and then we'll figure out what you need to do after that. Right? It's
Exactly.
it's it's trial by fire. You learn by doing, and in all of those moments, you can either act or not, and not acting is always the worst result. Almost
Hmm.
every
Hmm.
single time, it is the worst result because it'll put you in a worse position. It'll put you in a position where you aren't fighting for yourself, you aren't growing, you aren't bettering yourself, right? And it's only going through those rough moments where you are able to learn and better yourself. If you're not failing, you're not learning. And that's a big part of why I see that. So it's really almost kind of a survival skill, right?
Right.
Where, thrown into like that last year, senior year, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be this dumb, awkward kid for a while I try to kind of figure things out, but like I have to figure things out. And it goes from that, and then it goes to college. And like when I went to college, I didn't want to be there either, right? I still went, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to be there. Like I had the rockiest start to college of probably anybody known to man. Not actually, but
bro,
like,
I'll put my story up. It's
oh
probably
man.
close, but like, who know? But like, bro, bring it on. What happened? What happened?
All right. So the first semester I go, didn't want to be there. Partied the entire time, failed out. Okay. I did this 2 more times. I failed out 3 times. I came back to UTA with a 1.1 GPA.
Oof.
I was not supposed to be allowed back in the program, but I went and I did 2 years at TCC, took a lot of architecture courses, built my portfolio up, and came back to them and was like, hey, like, I really want to go through this. I really want to be in this program. Like, I know this is what I want to do. Like, can you guys help me out here? So in my last year that I failed out, that third time I failed out, I was going through some pretty rough stuff in my personal life. My mom had gotten diagnosed with cancer, and it was a pretty scary moment at the time. She's much better now. She's doing great. But I was also trying to work 60-hour weeks and, pay for school out of pocket. And like, none of that is sustainable. None of that works.
No, it's broken.
Like this, unless you have financial support going to school, unless you have that massive push through high school to be like, you need to get scholarships and do all this. Like, that wasn't like, again, like, that wasn't as serious up there. Like, down here, it was like, okay, well, like, you needed to be preparing for scholarships since second grade. Up there, it's like, you should maybe consider scholarships. As a senior, like, coming down here, as a senior, I was just like, okay, well, I'll apply, but I legitimately don't qualify for any of these. And the ones I do qualify for, I'm probably like the worst candidate for all of them. Right. And so it was, I joke with my friends a lot that a lot of what I do is from a perspective of a brute force solution, because I just throw myself at it, right? And I mean, that's what I did with that. And it goes back to that kind of survival element of like, it's either I do it or I don't. I can push myself through it or I don't. And if I don't, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. But if I do, I'm going to love myself. And I want to love myself. So why would I not do it and try to do it to the best of my ability? And like, that's going to make me happy the entire way through because I'm doing it for myself and I'm doing as much as I can to be the best that I can be for me.
That's so beautifully put, Ryan. Is that something that just like came from you? Is it your mom's voice? Is it your dad's? Is it a bunch of books? Like, because that's probably as healthy of an outlook on failure. And honestly, architecture school kind of makes you go that route of like, I can't take these failures too hard here, But that was before you kind of even got into it. And you still had that brute force. Is it poor personality, you think? Like, what you think?
No, I think it's definitely, that kind of forged in the fire element. There was a stint in my relationship with my parents where I didn't really have a good relationship with them. And it was a rough go, and like that kind of like pushed things and divided a little bit. And again, our relationship is wonderful now. My parents are lovely, wonderful people, and I have fantastic relationships with them. And I swear they're not holding me at gunpoint as I say that. But it took a while to get. Like, you can see my grandfather's rifle is in the corner there. But it took a while to get there, though, right? It was a lot of growing pains, and it was a lot of learning myself and how to be myself and how to push myself and do it for me. Do it because I wanted to, not because I felt like I had to. Do it because I felt that I deserved more for myself, because I wanted to give myself more.
Mm.
And there's a lot of it in there because like there's a lot of down moments in that as well, right?
Right,
There's
of
a lot of
course.
depression that I fought through at many moments as well. And that's like heavy moments that like help forge those things. When you're in those kind of low moments of like, man, like nothing I'm doing is working and I don't know what I want to do and I don't know that I want to do anymore. You're just kind of like, well, I do or I don't. It's like, why would I not?
But bro, so many people hit that same spot and crash and burn and falter and become crazy addicts, or it's just too late. They've burned so many bridges, whatever it is, And I absolutely kid how having to go through trial by fire, but what stuck that just keep on going. I mean, I'm pushing in like a bit deeper here, but like that is one of the hardest existential phrases even like to find in despair. Like just keep going, and often people do that for others, and often people get stuck in a loop of pleasing others to try and get out of it, because if others accept me, then I'll accept me. But like you flipped it, you know what I'm saying? And that's unique in pretty sure most of the world, or at least America. And is it, I mean, there isn't just one answer beyond trial by fire, but I'm sure that smaller town upbringing of, well, you fell, get up. Like, what are you doing, but was there like a pivotal moment or an epiphany in there? Or was it just always in you? I guess that's my main question of like how this came to be.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's definitely an epiphany moment in there, right? I don't think it's isolated to a singular moment necessarily. There's definitely like pivotal moments in there. But I think it's a buildup of many, many moments to kind of get there, right? Like
Mm.
filling out 3 times. I'm sure there's an individual epiphany isolated to each of those. And I know there was, man. There were like nights where I would like just like feel like I was so far behind and like was just gonna like not succeed and just like hate that I wasn't like doing more, couldn't figure it out or whatever, and just like walk through the halls of the architecture building, looking at the work on the walls, and just be like, man, why the hell am I even trying, right? And then I would
Yeah.
go back and I would keep working. And it's like because I want it. And like even now, there's moments where I was like, why did I want this? And then I have the good moments. I'm like, no, that's why I wanted this, right? Because when you have the moments where like you get to see all your work come together and the client sees it and they're just elated over it and they love it, like it all comes to that point of like, man, like that person is so happy with this thing that I made for them,
Mm.
and they love this. It's it's a roller coaster in a lot of ways at times. But kind of like back to the epiphany moments. Man, there were so many. Like when I finally kind of like got my shit together. Um, I came back and like I had failed out my third time because like my mom had her cancer moment, and just went through like a super depressive episode. At the time, I was dating a girl that had gotten pregnant and she miscarried, and like that was
Mm.
a pretty heavy thing to deal with at the time. Um, and just kind of like going through these moments and like smoking way too much weed and being depressed and like getting to this point of like, man, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's like I'm the one doing this to myself. Nobody's doing
Right.
this to me. This is me. Like this is all me. Like I'm the one making the decisions here. Like I'm the one that's like failing to take action here. And like there's constraints in life that I can't control. But
Of
like if I
course.
can't control them, they're not my problem. The only thing I can do is choose how to react.
Mm,
And the majority of the time, if I can react in a positive manner that's helpful to that person, it's better for everybody. You know, you don't make
exactly.
things better by throwing gasoline on a fire, right?
Right.
And that's not to say that I won't throw gasoline on a fire from time to time. It can be fun, let's be honest.
Right, right, right.
But like the majority of the time, if the problem is serious and I want to resolve it, it's like I'm going to try to figure out how to do it as best as I can, and I'm going to make sure that it's good and that it works because I owe that to myself. I owe that to the people that I'm interacting with, right? I don't necessarily feel like I'm obligated to them,
Right, right.
but if I do it for myself, I'm going to bring the others around me that are contributing up with me.
Right, like why bring any amount of real negativity? You can have concerns and speak about them, but the manner in which it's done, the tension, the stress, it's all so crucial on how it's even being presented. And being that poor, calm, and nice, hopefully, then it also helps a person who's kind of like having a crazy moment to see, okay, like maybe I'm like I can like calm down some. But if
Yeah.
it's instantly matched, like I honestly I don't love the people who say I just match energies, and it's like well, that gives up all power to complete external circumstances, and however they are feeling any kind of mood about anything, and then it's just an interpretation of that because often people don't actually even tell you how they feel. It's like I think that they think about me that they think, and it's just like and that is instead of no, I'm going to keep on going and pushing forward because all of us have this opportunity cost with all of our thoughts. You can have positive or negative, and at the expense of each other. Instead of, oh yeah, I'm just thinking bad. It's like, well, no, it's at the expense of all this positive time. And keep on pushing. And obviously, it's way easier said than done, but it's first noticing our own triggers, effects, what have you, and slowing that down instead of demanding others to bring you up or calm or get a raise or have a better job or have whatever it is, and that individual perseverance must have been what really pushed you through school because there's no one pulling you through architecture school at all. It's almost meant
No,
to like
there's not.
push you out. So in that, was it that brute force that pushed you through all of it, or was there ever a moment of like, I don't know if I want to do this?
Oh man, every semester there's a moment of, oh, I don't want to do this, right? But here's the thing: is the
Oh,
entire time after I went back,
uh-huh.
I'm sitting on a 1.1 GPA going back, and every single moment, if I failed, I was done.
Mm,
Like
mm,
it didn't matter what class it was. If I failed, I was done. The only way I
wow.
stayed in that program was by maintaining a certain GPA every single semester.
Oh, wow.
Because as soon as I didn't, I was done. I was out of the program. And so it
So,
was only perpetually an element of how bad do I want it and do I want it? And the answer inevitably was always yes.
right. So pause a sec. You first go to UTA and try not once, not twice, but three times in Kappa in architecture school, and
Yeah, that's
then
correct.
go to the Richmond communities at TCC or RCC.
It's Tarrant County. So it's the
Yeah,
Tarrant County
TCC.
South campus.
Okay. And then come back. So did none of those courses get replaced? And so they just stuck you with that first GPA? and like there was no replacement of classes, or even after you took them, well, I
So
mean, I guess filling out 3 times, you end up in a different probationary thing, you know?
I don't even know what they would call it, to be honest.
The last straw.
So yeah, it was just perpetually the last straw.
Wow. Wow.
It's just
So,
on my transcript every semester. It's like he does not get another chance. He does not get another chance. There was a lot of classes that transferred over from TCC. When I came back to UTA, like I brought my portfolio that I had put together at TCC. I brought my mother's medical records. I brought a few other pieces of documentation that kind of explained my situation at the time. And I was like, look, this is what was going on. This is why it happened. It was like, I genuinely like want to do this. Like, can you guys
right.
work with me or to give me a chance? And Cheryl Donaldson, bless her heart,
Yep.
she's wonderful. All right, she is an absolutely
Article.
wonderful person.
Yeah.
Heart of gold. She changed the entire semester to withdrawal for me. She changed my status from failing out to withdrawing for the semester.
Legit.
It wasn't just her. There was other people at the university outside of the architecture program that helped me out a ton. I met with it was like 3 or 4 different like university counselors to kind of go through things and like get things fixed. But bless every single one of them because they helped me out. They got me to the spot that I can be in today.
Right.
I will never like I'll throw ego on for fun because it's fun to bullshit. But I will never ever ever be blind to the fact that I am the sum of all the parts of people that have helped me along the way, because I would not in any capacity be where I am without a lot of people in a lot of very pivotal moments.
Exactly. And those are probably the most crucial people in our uh, lives. And there's always one thing I notice with the people who really help you versus the enablers. The people who really help you, they want to hear what you just said. Hey, I screwed up. This happened. I'm not denying it, but I'm here facing you right now. And that goes a long way, instead of like, oh, y'all owe me, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, but who owes anybody anything beyond like a parent child? But that's a whole other discussion that I won't get into. But like, that's incredible that they helped you out, because if this was like the 80s, they probably would have said, fuck off, you know?
Man, yeah, no, you're spot on with those relationships, right? Like I think it's really influenced the way that I kind of view work now, right? Like I try to go into a job with a perspective that I don't work for somebody, I work with somebody, right? Because those are the people that I want to work with. I don't want to work for somebody. I will respect the hierarchy, right? Because I understand the importance of hierarchy in decision making. But if you want me as part of your team, I am exactly that. I am part of your team. I am working with
Exactly.
you. We are working together. And that means that I'm going to bring my opinion. That means I'm going to bring humility. That means I'm going to own up to my mistakes. I will take ownership where I need to take ownership. And I'll even take ownership in areas that I probably don't need to take ownership, because it means that I'm able to help bring things up. Right. There's,
Right.
there's, you said something earlier about, kind of helping other people out. And this is going to sound like a little egotistical, and I don't intend it to sound this way. But one phrase that I kind of try to apply to myself quite frequently, especially when I'm going through kind of like a rough moment, or I know that I'm like coming up on like a part of like a week or a month, or like going through a phase in the year where I'm just like, I got to buckle up and do this. And it's what you're familiar with, but the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And
Right.
sometimes you have to be the boat, and sometimes you have to be the tide. But you have to know when to be one and when to be the other, because you can't always be one or the other. And I try to apply that same mentality when working with people, right? Because I want to be part of the tide. I want to be part of the boats. I want to know when I need to help lift others up, but I also want to know that others are going to lift me up when I need it.
Right.
Because let's be honest, like I'm not always great about asking for help when I need it. I try to be
Exactly.
better about it, but I also see in others when they need help and know what they can't ask, and so that's when I try to jump in and help them.
Right, and that's where it's for the people around you are crucial, and as we're older, it becomes more of a choice who we're actually around, because some people out there are just takers, and when it's like, hey, like I'm in a spot, it's like, sorry, and it's like, well, then that's not an actual friend you want to have in these dark times, because what there, but on the flip, there is other extremes of demanding others to always fix problems, so it is that balance of knowing when you know you don't know. A bunch of no's right there, but like,
Yeah.
understanding I have a blind spot. I'm gonna put out feelers or ask people I trust, but it's understanding I'm blind here. But that's probably also another extremely hard existential moment. What
Well,
year?
it comes back to like the humility element, right?
Right.
Like I will always choose somebody that can bring humility and put aside ego for a moment when it's needed, right?
Right.
Because like I try to do those things as well, and I don't think I'm perfect. I try to improve on that area a lot, because I think as far as weaknesses go, it's like one, like I have to be able to put aside myself, and two, I can't expect myself out of others, right? And it's
Right.
so easy to project your expectations for yourself
Right.
onto others.
That's
It's
the
so
easiest
easy.
thing. It's the like instantly.
Yep.
Why do we do it as humans though? Just like,
Dude,
boom, done.
it's so easy. It happens all the time.
It's like, why
But
aren't you
I think
me?
that's like right. And I think that's the moment where it helps to kind of step back and say like, okay, this is where I'm the tide. I don't need those people to be part of it, but I can help lift them up. They don't have to do the same thing I'm doing. They don't have to achieve the same thing that I'm achieving, but I can help them get to where they want to be the best versions of
Interesting.
themselves and do the things that they want to do for themselves, right?
Yeah.
A big mantra that I try to adhere to is that everybody's always just trying to do the best they can with what they have.
Right.
And that's not always true. There
No.
are some fuckheads out there. There are some fuckheads out there.
A lot.
But for the most part, and I'm very, very grateful that like of everybody I've ever met in my life, I'm not a religious person, but I'm very, very blessed to have the wonderful people in my life that I have had and that I continue to have and that I will have.
Right.
I've met some really, truly awful fuckheads that I wish nothing but the worst for because they fucking deserve it. But 99.9% of the people that I meet in this world have been absolutely wonderful and helped me out when I needed it. And I'm happy to return that favor.
Right. And that extreme also of people hurting people, there's always just that scared child underneath, but some are just so callous and so far gone, current events included, that like it's just impossible to even have a discussion because it's so messy, and there's instant assumptions and triggers and answers instead of trying to have any amount of empathy for the other side. And that is where putting the ego back and stepping up as a larger person, and stepping back, I mean, and telling others to hopefully express what they're actually going through instead of trying to assume they're experiencing it the exact same as me. I myself had a mantra in school. I don't know where it came from, but it came from when I would give advice to others instead of like myself. But the world has everybody else. It needs you as you, not John or Sally or blah, 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 blah. We already have them. Why would anybody else want two of them, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, And that's
you're here with intention.
right. And here with that uniqueness, because because all of us have such a different experience and path. And so, what year was college for you, and that span?
Oh man, 2010 to 2023.
So you do have me beat on longevity, I think, but that counts grad school too, right?
That counts grad school, and it also omits 4 or 5 years of breaks in there.
Right,
So
right.
it's start to finish, but all in all, time actually spent in the school, I would say it's probably 9 years of those
Schooling.
13. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I'm at about that. I had a couple of dropouts and academic probations and extensions, and then retaking the classes multiple times, and then finally transferring. But that is for a whole other podcast. In school, I don't want to focus too much, but did you go straight through, or was it broken up?
Well, the
As
the
in,
gaps of failing out excluded.
Right.
I did end up going straight through. So once I kind of got my shit together and I was able to return, I did 2 years at TCC and then went straight into UTA. And through UTA continued all the way until graduation. So it was 6 years straight of TCC to undergrad graduation, and then a year off, and then 2 years of grad school.
Okay. In that year off between, did you work at an architecture firm?
Not at a firm. I worked for a metal fabricator.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
In the trades.
In the trades. It was an interesting experience. I was originally not going to stay in Dallas. I had accepted a spot at the University of Virginia in their architecture graduate program.
My dad went there. That's what's up.
Oh, did he? Dude, it's a wonderful program.
Oh my God, he loves it. Yeah. He's like, go there. Yeah, he loves it.
Man.
Yeah, he was at Texas A&M for undergrad, and he doesn't even bring it up. He's like, I went to Virginia, Thomas Jefferson, blah, and he just loves it. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I in a lot of ways I still wish that I had gone there. When I was looking at going, I had an experience with one of the faculty members that kind of swayed my opinion, and I was like, I don't think this is the right fit for me anymore.
Right.
And so I decided to stay at UTA after that, which, I had planned on leaving. And so when I was interviewing with firms, I was talking to a few firms at the time and had gotten a few offers and told all of them, I was like, hey, I'm going to leave. And so they were all kind of like, okay, well, we're going to pass then. And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like, I'm not going to be here. Like, an internship is a trial run for the firm to see if they want you as an asset, right? And if they know that you are not going to be present to be an asset after the fact, it doesn't really make sense for the firm to invest, which, like that mindset is like really kind of like pulling it down to like the minutiae of the relationship, because it's more than that, of course. But from like a business perspective, that's what it is.
It is, but is that pulling the tide down, or is that being the boat?
I don't think it's pulling the tide down. I think it's just
It's not pulling it
making
up.
everybody aware that you're in water.
Yeah, it's like throwing you overboard, basically. Like, hey, start swimming, have some floaties.
Well, I think
So
one of
funny.
the things that we do worst is like in the profession, in academia, we don't like we romanticize everything to the point that it's detrimental, right?
Right.
Where we like, how many times through your schooling or your professional career have you ever had anybody tell you that the relationship between an intern and a firm is a trial run to see if they want to develop and invest in you as an asset?
Oh, every time.
Never. Like,
Well, I heard it
nobody's
after the
ever
fact.
explicitly said, right,
Right,
yeah, but
right, right.
nobody through
Well,
school like ever explicitly
right.
says that.
Not in school. Frankly, I have a boss now who's super transparent on the business
Oh yeah.
aspect, and he does for any new hires, like they're interns first, and then because he also goes more people closer out of school, so you have to train them up. He understands. Yeah, it takes 18 months, couple years, a few full projects, depending on what it is. That can take a long time, to actually understand what's happening here, and then maybe just have your own big one, or whatever it is. But you're right. Whenever I was trying to find it, I was like, oh yeah, I want mentorship in the studios and ideas floating around all the time, just like scholars, blah 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 blah. And it's more spreadsheets than sketching.
And in a lot of ways, yeah. It really genuinely is. And like I don't say those things to like chip away at anything or like to be contrarian, but I think it
No,
would
no,
help a lot of people like through school if
exactly.
like professors and professionals kind of told students like, hey, they're not bringing you in because they want to give you a job and like see how well you design.
Yeah,
Like, that's not what this is.
they don't.
In some very, very, very specific cases, maybe, but they can train you on all of that.
Yeah, really, that happens when you have a professor who sees a student and is like, wow. But then that means the professor has to have a firm, which at least at UTA only one did, two did. Like it's a little different now. It's grown, I've heard, but most are adjunct. The core is still like kind of the same because it also, as a professor, it takes a while to even understand that. And so pushing into that first job, it was after grad school. Yeah.
Well,
Or like in a
um,
firm.
so I had my first internship in a firm right after freshman year.
Okay. Okay.
So I
What about the first full time after?
first full time in a firm is after is post grad graduation. So the role that I'm in now is my first like true full time with a firm.
Right. Right.
But I'd done a couple internships previously, and then I had the trade job previously as well.
Right. Right. And you spoke to a point just prior how this kind of experience and knowledge isn't being taught in the very place that's supposed to tell you and prepare you for that job, for the real world. Yes, I understand all of the theory and the want to focus on that, but there is always a balance. And did you feel blindsided? Yes or no?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think I
After?
think I I think I was more aware of it than a lot of people probably are.
Why
Um,
so?
I think again, those earlier years of just having to kind of like survive.
Mm,
It I think kind
right,
of
right.
helps break down uh, stigmas and mental barriers and the kind of romanticized elements of like
Right.
what gets sold to you versus what the product is, right?
Right.
And so it's kind of that necessity of survival element as well. And so I think, you know, a strength of mine is often, and maybe to the detriment or disagreement of others, is the ability to kind of strip things down to like the bare essence of what it is and kind of remove some emotion
Mm.
from it to be like, look, this is what's going on and this is what this is. Because I don't think it's until you get to that point you remove the emotion from it that you can truly frame it as it needs to be framed to execute a proper decision on it.
Bro, that sounds perfect for architecture school and the profession, because it's just, you have to go head first and you're gonna have a bunch of oh shit moments, and just having to keep on pushing. And after graduation, walk me through how you got that job, from the job search type to the interview type to even the first week there.
So, you know, my shift to the full-time position was coming from a part-time position with the same firm. So in the summer between first and second year of graduate school, I started working with my current firm.
Mm,
And interned with them through the summer, and I told them up front, like, hey, like, I am not interviewing for an internship position. I understand that that's what this position is, but my interviews right now are coming from a perspective of I am interviewing for an internship with the desire and goal of turning it into my firm for the next 3 to 5 years.
exactly.
It wasn't, hey, this is a part-time thing for me. It's like, hey, I am trying to find my home for the next 3 to 5 years where I'm going to get licensed and put a bulk of my time into. It wasn't worth treating as a temporal element.
Bro, that is beautiful, because so many people go into interviews and they think I'm going to let them control everything. You can also
Oh, you
control that.
can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And basically tell them why they should hire you before they tell you why they shouldn't hire you. Because they're trying to find every reason not to. And if you sell them, and it's honestly a damn shame that communications, sales, business is not in our curriculum at all. Over 4 years of education, that
Well,
it's
it
the most crucial
is.
part.
It is.
No, no, no.
We
I
just
mean,
don't
no, no, no.
frame it,
Yes, yes. It is
because
trial by
realistically, every
fire.
jury that you have is you selling yourself. It is you selling your product. It's you selling yourself.
Yes,
It's
yes.
working on your business abilities. It's just not framed that way.
100%. And because it's not framed that way, often the crucial parts are missed. Because all of us are human beings, obviously, and we aim at things, and a frame is an aim. And if I'm not thinking about my legit public speaking, the tone, the pauses, the body language, the graphics on the whole wall, on and on and on. If I'm not thinking of it in those translation terms, because school, we focus so much on the project itself and the party and the idea and having a great model and some graphics, but then it's so crucial how it's put through us. And I intentionally took a public speaking class at QTA because, me of all people, I need all the practice, tips, experience I can get. And I took it as a junior, I think, senior maybe. And it was super helpful, just even on hopping up and practice speaking on something that I actually didn't have to think up, or it's not that important, because that stress, you aren't able to focus on the things that can actually ease it, because it was always the people who spoke well who did better for the most part. Like, yes, the
Oh yeah.
stronger projects, but the people who communicated it.
Yeah, it's sales, man. It's all sales. It's you are your brand. And that goes into how well you speak, how well you sell your product, how you hold yourself, how you understand the relationships, how you, build and work those relationships. Again, like a big part that I think academia misses in some ways. And it's not like a UTA thing or any school
Right,
specific
right.
thing. I think it's just kind of
Academia.
like it's academia because they have so much they have to teach you.
Right, exactly.
So much. And it's like we can
That's
sit here and
true. That's
criticize
true.
it all night, but it's not like I have
Right.
an answer for
No,
how they
yeah.
can do it better.
Well, that's also the whole point of this small project is to provide that space for all the things that school is missing. The presentations, the speaking, the critical feedback in real time in front of colleagues. All of these are crucial that often is missed because often I'm just presenting. I'm not actually telling them, because often in a jury, I'm only thinking about me. I might pay attention to my friends or someone who's great, but I'm so worried about mine, I can't even focus on theirs. But if it was more of a student jury or some kind of feedback, that was my favorite part of my very first semester at UTA. I had Pia, and Pia made all of us talk about the drawings instead of her, because the following semester I had Wheat, and he went and that helped a bunch also in its own way, but I found a proper way to speak about the drawing, not your drawing, because it's not personal, it's what's happening,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
often,
that's a big element.
because the thing that really irked me is at the end, the seniors were still like, well, I felt and I like, but I think because I just saw that, and it's very topical and not deep in academia, which is supposed to be pretty thorough and research. And I'm more so trying to pick apart school because it does so many things well. What's it lacking? So because the thing that can't be copied is that sense of camaraderie, and all of us going through this thing together individually and being able to relate to the sorrow, the sleepless nights, on and on. But kind of backing up some, if you got that first internship as a freshman, did you work there every summer? And then even backing up actually even more, how did you snag that interview?
Man, I think with that one, I was the luckiest son of a bitch to have that opportunity. I don't even remember how I got that interview. I don't think I didn't go to career fair or anything like that. It was my first year at UTA, and I applied for an internship position at Jacobs. And I had a little portfolio together because I had done the stuff with the school, with Rockwell ISD, and I had done like the presentation and stuff for them. And like I had a little portfolio already, and I applied at Jacobs for an intern position. And they gave me the job, and I worked with them for the summer. And the only other intern they had was somebody that was a senior at UTA, and it was like something at the time I didn't like really like I think fully grasp the gravitas of it, right?
Yeah, bro. I was
Like
like,
now
hey,
I look back and I'm like, what the
yeah,
hell was I doing?
right, bro. I've been applying to Jacob since day one, like, like, like since day one. I've been like, please hire me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because now I like one like I don't know that I would like necessarily want to work for a firm that size anymore. Just for like office culture reasons and like project focus and like career path reasons, not like anything to do with like the firm itself, right?
Right.
Um, But
So how'd you?
it's kind of funny because I feel like I would have less of a chance of getting the job there now than I did then in some ways, which probably isn't true, but like it really comes down to a level of like having a stronger understanding of like what I want out of my career and what I'm looking for and what I think my path is that I want to go down.
Mm, interesting. And I want to ask all about that, but staying on this first internship for the moment, did you apply online and then they hit you up? Did you just walk up in there because it's pre-COVID and it's a little easier, or like how'd you like
Oh man,
actually snag it?
it was online. It was online.
Wow.
This would have been like 2010, 2011.
Oh
And
wow.
just filled out an application online, sent it in, got a call, went and interviewed, and um, just went in my little suit
Wait,
and brought
so
my
was
wood
this after you
covered
failed out?
portfolio. And this was I think
Because if it's
I had actually just
2010,
I think
wait,
I
you got
actually
a
just failed
job
the
after you
spring
failed
semester
out?
before.
So did you finish the first fall semester?
I finished the first fall semester.
Barely.
I
And
don't think my
then,
grades were great. And then
yeah,
the second semester, the spring semester, would have been the one that
you
I filled out, and I
you failed?
went and got a job at Jacobs.
Oh my God, you failed out and you get a job. Bro,
Look,
you
I'm
are the
telling you, man, this
luckiest
is a
son of a
brute
bitch, bro.
force
Oh my
solution. Of
God. Did you tell them you failed out or no?
course not. Absolutely not.
Of course not. That's so funny. Oh my God, bro.
Yeah. Good old, God, good
That's a
old 19,
first,
20-year-old
bro.
me.
Yeah, that's probably a first and gonna be the last because it might be ego. I don't really care what it's labeled. It's impressive of being able just to keep on pushing, bro. I'm like, well, I just failed out, but would you give me a job? Like, and then how many summers did you work there and what years was that, especially relative to the actual time in school?
So I just worked there for the summer. It was a really great experience. It was super awesome. So I worked on like a few different projects with them. One in Montgomery, Alabama, the other in Washington
Hey,
D.C. And like, hey,
hey.
and like I was working on joint force projects for the Army and National Guard, and was doing like military base consolidation essentially, and like new
Wow,
build to replace like old facilities. It was a really
interesting.
interesting
Yeah.
opportunity. Um, really enjoyed it. By my understanding, they loved having me over there. They invited me back the next summer, but at that point, I had filled out once, and I was kind of in a position where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this.
Wow.
Little did I
Wow.
know, 10 years later, I would still be doing this. But like,
Right.
at the time, I was like, I'm just going to take some time off and like try to figure my shit out. I went and worked some other jobs. I went and did like audio and video editing uh, for Cinemark theaters for a little while.
Mm.
I helped kick off and headed a division that would do audio video editing and then film distribution for essentially like indie films through all of their theaters, plus actually competitors theaters as well, like AMC and Regals.
Mm.
Um, so I did that for a couple of years and tried to take classes kind of like in the meantime, but that's where I kind of kept hitting bumps of like, okay, I'm working like 60-hour weeks and I'm trying to go to
Right.
school and I'm failing. And so like that's where kind of
Right.
like the other failures came from. And it wasn't until I left that job and started going and serving tables at Saltgrass that I was able to kind of go back to TCC and start like taking courses again.
Right.
Um, so it wasn't until 2019, 9 years later, when I had my second internship. And so I had done Jacobs in like 2010, 2011. Some time goes by, and from between third and fourth year, I did study abroad. I went to India with Nason and Caleb Stanley and a bunch of other really awesome people.
Yeah, bro. How did we like never cross paths? Because like Caleb's like the man, bro. I love Caleb.
Bro,
Like,
I know he's fucking awesome. He's
I've
the
been
man.
like, bro, join the Discord, but he's always like ducking me. But no, it's all good. He's amazing.
He's a beautiful, wonderful giant human. I love the hell out of him. He's a fantastic person. It's genuinely remarkable that we have not crossed paths sooner. But yeah, I did that with him and some others, and coming back from that trip in the summer, I started my second internship. It was at a firm called Streetlights Residential. They are a developer that does multifamily, a lot of like garden style, but a lot of towers as well. But like high-end residential. It was interesting. It was very production heavy. I spent a lot of time in Revit. They're developers first. I think they've got a brilliant business model. I think there's some room on improvement for the design side of things, but like, I mean, they're like Beck. They have their own construction company.
Right.
They buy the land, develop it out, build the tower, sell the tower.
That's
and they make a ton of money doing it. Like it's
I'm so interested in that model, and I could have that conversation for hours and hours and hours, because it's just so poor how the business models operate today in a vast majority of it. But I don't want to get too bogged down on it right now.
That'd be a good subject for another episode, though.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant business model, and I think the strength of that one is it gives you opportunity to kind of retain control of the product as the architect.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's so much conversation in our industry about how we lose control of different things that we used to have control over. And that model to me is like, okay, well, like the product is yours.
Exactly.
You're your own client. The product is yours. So you get a lot more control there. There's still constraints. Like there's still the mathematical equation that says, okay, this is profitable, this is not.
Right.
And like you got to work through those things. But I think it's all in all a pretty sweet model. My experience with them was really great. I enjoyed the time that I had over there. I ended up.
How did you get that job?
So at the time I had been bartending for a while. I was at this bar in Oak Cliff called Small Brew Pub. And small is such an interesting catalyst in my life because I know more people in the architecture industry through small than I do through the architecture industry. It's remarkable. Wow. I went to the career fair at UTA in the March of 2019, and I'm walking around and I see a guy that's a regular at small, and he sees me with Ryan, like a Jay, and we get chatting and talk each other up a little bit. And he's like, "Yo, come like work for my firm. I'd love to have you over here." And so I went to work for his firm for that summer. But it's really funny. Like the firm that I'm at now, I didn't know this at the time before I started there, but the firm that I'm at now has 3 people that were regulars at the bar when I was working there. I had no idea until I started working there. Right. It really is. I like walked in and I was like, these people look really familiar. And like a couple of weeks go by in the internship, and I like asked them, I was like, "Do you used to go to Small a lot?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I love Small. Like that place was great." I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes way more sense."
That makes way more sense. That's incredible, because most people, it's inverse. Like you have such an inverted story that just keeps on pushing, bro. It's incredible.
Dude, my story is ridiculous, I feel. And maybe it's not as ridiculous as I feel it is sometimes.
No. It is. It is.
In contrast, I'm taking to a lot, bro. Like it's that brute force solution.
Yeah, exactly. Bro, Small closed permanently?
Yeah, Small closed permanently. So they were running for about 5 years. They closed in December of 2019, sadly. And I was there for 4.5 of those 5 years, pre-COVID, right before. Yeah.
Not enough.
It was a
regulars,
wonderful place. It was it was a mix of things. We had some difficulties with the menu. We had a really fantastic chef there that was doing really phenomenal things. She's super, super successful now. Did not work with the neighborhood. was a little bit too high end on the style of food that was being served for the neighborhood, and we couldn't really get the food traffic that we needed to kind of really like bring the volume to stay afloat appropriately. So there's a lot of kind of things like that. I think you got dropped.
Roland, are you back? Hey.
Oh, there we go. Did I freeze or did you freeze?
It was you, because I was actually yeah, it's always me, right? I was like, oh yes, it's not me this time, it's him. But hopefully he's okay, because.
Well, you were frozen on my end, so I wasn't.
You were frozen on my end, so. But Monty, my producer, said that I was frozen on the stream, so it was me, I guess. My computer, because I'm streaming the Instagram off of here. I have to go back to that. I have to stream it off of here. That way it's not like going crazy, but my computer's a little warm. I just have to cool it down. Yeah.
It's that yellow duck.
Yeah, that yellow duck. But it is a crazy story, bro. And the firm now, how'd you snag that?
Man, it was a really. Sorry, go ahead.
Because this is just after graduation, right?
Yeah, so I came on with them between first and second year of grad school and started working part-time with them.
Okay.
And so
During the semester or? Oh.
No, just in the summer. So it was after that first spring semester I started looking. And I had applied with them, and I applied with a few other firms. I had gotten, it was like 6 offers. And I was trying to kind of like weigh things out and balance like where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go and like where I wanted to kind of take my path. Because like, like going into it when you first start interviewing and you get the question of like, okay, well, like what kind of projects do you want to work on? Like, why do you want to do this? And you're just kind of sitting there like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no idea, right?
Yeah, I've done nothing.
Yeah, I have no exposure. I have no experience. Like I'm taking a stab, and thankfully that's not what this was. Because at this point, like I already had like some experience, and like I'd worked the previous internships. I had worked a trade job a little bit, and I had an idea of like what realm I wanted to be in. And so I targeted firms working on those things. And
what for those things?
So a variety of project types. I had done a lot of multifamily at the previous position, and I enjoyed multifamily, but I didn't think that it was something that I wanted to retain myself in. So a variety of project types was important. A focus on mixed use specifically was a big one for me. I think mixed use is a really incredible opportunity for us to do what we do best. And I think it's a really incredible opportunity for us to bring a lot of things together in a remarkable way. Because it's a challenge to make all these things kind of happen in a zone that is, I mean, frankly, like as of late, kind of trying to be challenged in how it operates. And it gives us a lot of really unique opportunities to bring people together and bring them together for different reasons. And it gives you the strongest opportunity, I think, to focus on building cohesive communities, right? Not temporal communities, like cohesive, permanent communities. And so like wanting to do something mixed use is like really, really where I wanted to be. And that goes back to like the kind of like rural roots, right?
Right.
There's like a lot more kind of like natural community occurring. In an urban environment, you have a lot more temporal community.
It's horrible.
You don't have as much proximal community as much as you do have temporal community formed through activity, through place, not even permanent place, just like where you might be at the time. So mixed use, I think, gives you a stronger opportunity to develop a zone that brings more elements of that permanence together in an urban environment. So you get a lot of the great things that an urban environment offers You get to bring in a lot of the really nice permanent community elements that exist in a rural community.
You were preaching to the choirs, singing my song, bro. like this is what gets my juices flowing. Have you ever heard of the book Democracy in America by Alexander de Tocqueville?
The title sounds familiar. I have not read it, I believe.
So a brief. It was a report written by a Frenchman in the 1850s, I believe, just pre-Civil War, on how our experiment was going. And I bring it up because he focuses an entire chapter on the point of how the township is supreme to the county and is supreme to the state. And it starts here. It starts at the people close by, on and on and on. And that has just been lost. I mean, that book combined with Life and Death of American Cities, it just spells out the kind of downfall and pushing away from that. And through mixed use, it can really be brought back. So in your job now, are you feel you're able to kind of experiment in that, or do you feel it's more like you're still learning and gaining that experience?
I think it's both. You know, I am, I think, a lifetime student. If the 13 years I just spent trying to go through architecture school doesn't prove that, then maybe the next 13 will. But, you know, I think I have a lot to learn. Like, I'm still very green in my career. You know, like hours wise, like licensing wise, I'm halfway through, you know, and it's great to be at that point, and I'm very grateful for the experience
Yeah.
that I have. But I have a
Wow.
lot to learn. Right?
Already? Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, and man, I wish I'd counted more hours than I did, but that's
Yeah.
neither here nor there. But you know, I'm very grateful with my current firm because it gives me a lot of opportunity to experiment and do my own thing. You know, that was a big part of me choosing the firm that I'm at, was finding a place that, again, will work with me, right? That gives me the space to kind of explore and experiment these things that I think I'm good at, that they see that I'm good at, that they can kind of be like, hey, like, yeah, if you're interested, like, go explore those things and see how it brings value to us.
What would be
But
an example of that, like specifically?
so you know, I spent a lot of time working with like our 3D printers and thinking through
Mm.
processes of how we can implement that more for models, study models, stuff like that. I experiment a lot with AI and how that kind of involves itself in our process. I am part of our technology team in the process of analyzing our current design workflow and processes, and looking at the
Wow.
tools and methods of how we can bring different things in, different softwares in, testing different software to see if it has a place in our process and how that expands and streamlines our workflow.
And is
Which
it, uh-huh.
which for like somebody right out of school to have the opportunity to like jump in and have an impact in that way, where I can say like, hey, like we're looking at these things, like let's test these out, and already be seeing them being implemented and tested in our projects is really awesome.
Right.
Uh,
We're
but then
in,
like simultaneously, sorry, go ahead.
oh, well, we're just in the space now for the actual newer tech is in the hands of us and even people younger than us. And that's where that, I mean, what you're basically describing is R&D and them empowering it. And my question is that kind of a part of your day job, or is it something you have to pull in and still hit everything else? If that makes sense. Like, is it extra, you know?
It's extra. It's ultimately both.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's extra. It's not like I'm there to do that thing specifically, but I was brought on with the understanding that I possessed the knowledge and ability to help develop those things, right?
Yeah.
And that again goes back to the mindset of like, how do you implement me and part of your team if we're working together, right? Because I
how did
advertise
you?
those things on my resume. And so I know that when I'm going into the interview, I talk about these things and my interest in these things. That is part of what I want to do when I'm part of the team, right? But again, like this is an adjacency to like my day job, right? These are things that like if I have downtime during the day, I'll explore and experiment with these things, and I'll try to figure out ways to implement them. And you know, like that's where we're starting to see like some success of getting these things involved in our current process, because we do these things on the side and then we just try to execute an existing project and move forward and see how well it works.
Right.
But as far as day job goes, like I'm design team, like I'm crunching through all kinds of feasibility studies and analysis and master planning and like preliminary building design and like everything like that.
How cool. How cool. Most people, especially in larger firms, it's split up by design, production, even construction, and then even like, okay, there's sports, there's education, there's tech, there's on and on. Is that how it is now for you, or are you in a sector per se?
So we don't do explicit studios per se, but we do have people that have experience in different project types that tend to stay within those project types, right?
Right.
And typically that comes with similar roles as well. So we do have people that are more design team, and we do have people that are more production team. We have people that are kind of like the middle ground of design to production bridge, and people that are in only one or the other, right? And that goes the same for project types. So, you know, with my role being in design team, like I have production experience, you know, I work well in Revit. So if I ever have some downtime in the design side, if they need support in production, I can jump in and help. But it doesn't happen too often where that's the case for me personally. Most of the time, if I have downtime in one of my design projects, typically I'm told to just kind of hold tight because it's going to come back fast once the client makes a decision, right?
Right.
And so it's like, if we move you to this other project, we're going to lose you, and we cannot lose you off of this, right?
Yeah.
So if that happens, a lot of the time what we'll do instead is like, instead of me going to support production, like if there's like small production tasks I can pick up quickly, like fixing quick stuff on something in like CA, then I can jump in and help out with that. But it doesn't typically make sense for me to jump in and do like a lot of detailing work and helping out with something like that necessarily, right? Because that's a more involved phase of the project that would pull me in for a longer period of time. But if I need to go do some quick modeling for another design team's project or something like that and help them in a support capacity, where I don't have to be fully plugged into their project, they just need some tasks done on the design side where it's like, okay, can you help like with this presentation or these graphics or these diagrams or this model or these renders or whatever, and it's just like a couple days or something like that, then I will typically tap in and help with those things. Simultaneously, you have the inverse, right, where you have production people that will occasionally kind of come into the design side to be support, where they don't have to fully plug into a project, but most of the time they're sitting in that design or in that production realm.
Interesting. How many people are in the office, and then is it multiple offices?
We are one office right now, and we are sitting at about 50, just over 50 people.
Oh, that's it? I always thought maybe the name, like thought it was like ginormous or like huge or something.
We definitely have a reputation of being a more corporate firm. But it's funny because I don't feel like it's a corporate firm, right? I think we work with corporate level clients without actually
corporate
being
money.
a corporate firm. Yeah.
Yeah, because basically, is it private or startup money, or is it business money? and
It's business money. We're an
right.
S corp, like by
Right.
designation.
Mhm.
But like it's not operating like something like HKS or Beck or Jacobs or like a big corporation like that would be, right? Like we
Mhm.
have a similar command structure in place, but like culturally, like it's not like I'm walking into like one of dozens to hundreds of branches as a cog in
Right.
a machine of 5,000, 10,000 employees, right?
Mhm.
Like
That's
going in and
amazing.
getting
Yeah.
like a medium sized feel with like a corporate management structure that
Right.
like is not like operating in a traditional corporate manner. It's like one of the projects I'm on right now is like we're chasing a pursuit, and I'm working with one of our associate designers, a director, the CEO, and a couple other people, like two other directors,
Mhm.
getting a design proposal together for them. It's not like the CEO is just up there like running the company. Like the CEO is like in it with us, like designing stuff.
Well, yeah, because often if it's too big, the CEO is just in the books, and so like there's too much hierarchy where you aren't even seeing who's involved at all. That's so interesting because I'm finding that kind of sweet spot where you can get some work done but still keep that design, that human feel. It's in that 50, maybe 100, but once it starts being beyond, oh, I don't know who all works here, then it's a problem. But like 50 people organized, I mean, you're obviously building buildings. You can do a punch and point question in explaining your role, which is honestly in school, in hearing from people in jobs, it's like, oh yeah, I tried to be on the design team, but I'm stuck over here, and how did you finagle that more floating design? Do you think it was more pure skill, the brute force and the inner view of this is the job I want? Did you start in something else and grow into it? Like what happened there?
With the current firm, I came in. I think well, I don't. I guess it's hard to say like with my internship with them if I came in on design team. Um, I started with a lot of design work and I did some production work with them, and I kind of ran two projects simultaneously. I think with internships as well, it's harder to be design team, right? Or like a part-time position,
Right,
it's harder to be
right.
design team because the deadlines are like so turn and
Yeah,
burn and everything moves so fast that like one, like the time it takes to like get somebody caught up to speed on a project to be impactful and something you got to turn around in 3 days is
right,
difficult.
right,
And
right,
somebody that's part-time, like you will go through that project and like be in and out before you can get that person that's part-time even caught up on it, right?
right,
And
right.
so when I was in my internship, like I did both. I did design work and I did production work. And like, one of my like first like real tasks over my internship was to design a few different like restaurant options for them, right? And so like immediately from the start, it was, I'm involved in both. And then I helped with like CDs on like one of our multifamily projects and
Mm,
working through that. And I was still picking up design workloads doing that.
nice,
And then
nice.
also doing like model work and stuff like that as well. Since coming on full time, I've been just design team, right? Like that is the part of the team that I've been slotted in, and I think part of that is a few things. I think one, I communicated that up front, right? Like in my interviews and in my follow-up interviews for like full-time positions and stuff like that, I've communicated like, hey, like I'm looking to join design team, like I want to design. This is where I want to be. Two, like I would say it's probably not where it was now, just based off of perspective. But like, I feel like the projects in my portfolio were pretty strong, and
Right,
I showed a
right,
strong ability and understanding of design language, right? Because design language and production language are different,
right.
right? And both are critical, regardless of which side you're on, both are critical. But it is easier, I think, to have a conversation around finite understood things like assembly versus things that are more ephemeral and are idea driven in the design side of things, where you're still trying to kind of like figure things out and work it out of the heads.
Right.
Like when it's in here and it's got to get out here, that's kind of
Right.
like the more difficult part to have a conversation around. So I think having a mix of one, a propensity to show that I can have that conversation, or I'm at least like working towards being better at having that conversation. Two, communicating that out initially, and three, having a strong enough graphic skill set and design skill set coming out of school represented in my portfolio to show that I at least have the chops to try, right? And
Right.
I think like really any firm is gonna, and this may not be the case everywhere because a lot of like production is big money and production is a big need at a lot of firms. But one thing I did notice with my current firm was, and I've seen this in other people as well, is like they will always give new hires the opportunity to design, right? And I think
Wow.
that's really that's kind of a test, right? They
What?
want to see how
Right.
well you do. Like you get a small design test, they want to see how you do. They want to see how you communicate it. They want to see how you show it. If you do it well, you'll get another one. If you do it well, you'll get another one.
Right.
And then that kind of eventually slots the decision. So like through my internship, I was involved with both, right? When I was part-time through the school year, I was involved with both. And I never got dropped from the design side because I was able to, I think, and this is a little hypothetical because I haven't asked anybody and gotten confirmation on this. This is just like observational. Like I've been continued to be given those design opportunities. So now I'm design team, right?
Right.
Versus, I've seen people that came in with strong production skill sets and have gone straight into production. I've seen people that they brought in and given opportunities on both, and they've decided, oh, this person's better for production. And so it's kind of a mix of things like that, right?
Yeah, and it really speaks to your own talents and skill set, because the employers will guide people into the roles that they just have a gut feeling on, and hopefully they do test. Often some are just production houses or even just design. I mean, out here it's split. Like there's design firms and then production firms, and it's probably that way all over. But a bunch are essentially partners and essentially kind of the same firm, because they pass it back and forth, and it's really leaning into what you want, because design is only one part that keeps the whole thing moving. You can be great at business and people and talking people up and just having that charm, or you can not have the charm and be like, I do the technical stuff, and on and on, and there's so many routes, and finding your own and being a where is just oh so crucial. And often the portfolio speaks for itself. In that interview, kind of walk me through it, because I get it's for an internship, but did you show them the portfolio again after you finished, or just on the first hire? And side tangents, I would love to see it and have it on here, so we should schedule a O'Brien
Yeah, yeah,
portfolio,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like my portfolio is so bad right now.
Bro, bro, that's the point.
That yeah, that's the constant perspective, right? I had the initial portfolio in my internship interview, but after that, I don't think that we discussed it again, because I had been with them for a year at that point
Right,
already.
right.
And at
I'm
that
just
point,
curious.
like like once you're with a firm that long, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's kind of funny. Like we've been interviewing people in like trying to bring some more people on board. And I've reached out to some friends, and they've been like, well, like my portfolio isn't updated yet, and like I don't know if I have time to do it. I'm just like, don't look, just do this. Like, make it 8x8, one spread per project, pictures only with the name of the project and the year you did it.
Right,
Maybe
tiny,
put the software on there. I don't need a description. I don't need any words at all. I need pictures, I need title, I need software, and I need date. That is it.
Right.
And when I do my portfolio again, that's what I'm going to do. Nobody reads that stuff.
Right. And
like,
it's
unless you have the time to like sit down and like really dig into it, which most people doing these interviews don't.
right.
Nobody's going to read that stuff.
Right, exactly. But you show them in the interview, was it pretty portfolio heavy? Like, hey, walk me through it. Was it more of a conversation interview? Was it their interview? Was it your interview? I mean, it sounds like it was your interview, you know?
I don't. Well, maybe it was. They might feel differently. I was gonna say I feel like it was both of our interview, but I tried to treat all interviews as a conversation, right? And so when I go into an interview, I make sure that I have 5 or so questions that I want to target that will help me learn more about the firm. Typically something that gives me an idea of how they operate their projects, something that gives me an idea of how they manage their people, something that gives me an idea of how they react to certain situations, right? Be it market conditions, something like COVID, so on and so forth, where I can just get an idea of like how reactive are they and what do they do when they're reactive. And then, just some questions that give me a better sense of like who the people I'm interviewing with are and what the goals are for the firm, right? Like I try to make sure it's a conversation because again, like it goes back to the mindset of working with. It's like I want to be a part of something that I'm going to contribute to and help grow, and I want others to be helping me grow, right? And so I'll typically be asking about like mentorship opportunities and resources for growth, resources for licensing, stuff like that, right?
Right.
And I am probably one of the most inquisitive people at an interview would have, for those reasons. But it's something that I really try to make sure is a conversation and a dialogue where it's more back and forth than it is inquisitive, right? On the portfolio side of things with them specific, they had my portfolio prior, so they got to go through my portfolio beforehand, and they acknowledged that in the interview. And that's been the case at every interview I've had. Like they all acknowledged at the beginning that they've gotten a chance to go through go through the materials, the resume, the portfolio, and so they'll ask about resume experience. And the one that I get the most questions about is the time I worked at the metal shop, I think. And so that's always kind of a fun one to share the experience on, right?
Right.
And then they'll typically ask for me to go through a project that I like in my portfolio or like highlight something that, sticks out that I really enjoy. And typically that response looks like me picking probably the most recent because I always feel like the recent one is the most rehearsed. But the recent is almost always the best, right? Because you have all the experience from the previous ones under your belt. And so you're able to execute a better project. Typically, I'll point out like some projects in my portfolio, like I'll just do a quick scroll through, right? Before I actually pick one, I'll be like, well, this one's cool. I like this one. This one was okay. I thought this one was a lot of fun, but it'll be just like a one spread thing where it's like, I just thought this one was cool. Like there's not much to talk about, but like it's a cool looking project. And then I'll pick one to talk about and kind of go from there. And it's almost always
That's pretty smart. Yeah.
It's an opportunity to kind of go through and give like quick commentary of like, oh, this one was cool, this one was fun, oh, I did this, I wanted this and this one. But let's talk about this one more extensively and kind of get into it there.
Bro, that's smooth because people are often so panicked and just being able to like, oh, do I speak about everything, every idea about every little thing? It's like, well, but there's only so much time. These people are trying to pay you money, so it's like, hurry up, like, and they don't want to spend hours and hours and hours either on it, and nor do to even care. But that is a great tactic of, just boom, 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 and let's focus on this project here.
It gives exposure to those other things, but really, like, what they're trying to do in that moment, they don't really care about the project, right? Like, they care if you have nice graphics, but only in the sense of is this person capable of producing nice graphics already?
Right.
And does that mean that they will be a good fit for design team?
Right.
Right? Because everybody knows how to make good graphics. Everybody knows how to make good graphics. It's most of the time
Sometimes.
with well, like, people professionally, like, in the design side of things, like, most of the
Yeah.
time, like, they know how to make good graphics. It's okay. Do we have the time to make that graphic? Right.
Right. Right. That's true.
But, like, that's not what they're looking for in that little presentation of your favorite projects in your portfolio. They don't even really care about the contents of it. They want to see how well you can sell it, how you talk about it, how you present yourself. It is an
Exactly.
opportunity to display your ability and how well you do at public speaking.
And it's befuddles me how that's not a focus. It is talked about a lot. Depends on the professor. It's mostly addressed if it's going horribly. And it's typically going horribly during a jury when it shouldn't be going that horribly. You should have had some kind of practice prior. And that's also why on here we're trying to bring on 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 students, and we have 2 on Sunday to practice that, because in school, focusing on what's being said and how it's being said is the last thing on everybody's mind. I mean, I would maybe practice my presentation. Like, did you ever practice it in school?
Oh, never.
Right, that's a
Never.
problem. Right, right.
It is for sure. And I think, again, like, I have a little bit of an upper hand in, like, the confidence that gets projected through the nerves, right? Where I can,
Yeah,
like, if I know, and this goes into, like, the time I spend bartending and whatnot, where, like, like, the service industry, the entire time it's selling yourself. Like, you're selling food and drinks, but you're selling yourself in the experience, right?
right. For
Putting
that
some
tip.
pictures on the wall and talking to people, like, it's not that different. The product's mine. It's not a dish, you know.
Right, right. Mm.
So it's a little bit different, I think, in that sense. But, you're spot on in that thought of, like, practice makes perfect in those moments. If you know your product, you've already practiced.
Yes, but there's a big difference from a performance aspect of stepping out there and winging it and relying on, in that moment, kind of a coin flip, or the raw innate abilities, when the point of school is to learn the stuff you don't have. And versus like an actor or a poet or a musician or anybody performing, a dancer won't just pop out and just start. There's choreography, and also in the art of selling and the art of persuasion, there's an opening, a middle, and a close, and a call to action. And like, often there has to be some kind of real rhetorical push in ethos, pathos, or logos, and those aren't even an angle of may like they often aren't an angle of any project, and or how it's being presented. And if that's the most crucial aspect, that should be at least 1 hour a week, some like focused time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think to some extent we're kind of making the same point, right?
Right,
So
right.
when I say, like, knowing your product is the practice, right? like your ability to kind of go up and wing it, like it isn't inherently winging it, right? Anytime you like wing something, for the most part, if you can wing something well, it's because you understand the points that you need to hit and you understand your
Right.
product or your presentation well enough to hit those points, right? If you are truly winging it, like going in, like not knowing what you need to hit, it's going to be a disaster,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's a
Doesn't matter
great
like
point.
the amount of salesmanship you can throw on top of it, because there is an art of
Right.
salesmanship that goes on top of this, right?
Right.
Which I think is part of the point that you're making here, is there's always an element of salesmanship that goes into like truly selling the product. But depending on how well you know your product, depending on how well you know when you're going into that jury, is like, I made these decisions for this reason. This is the sequence of my project. I need to hit A, B, C, and D. This is the concept. This ties it all together. I need to hit them in this order. You can go in and wing that if you know those things without rehearsing the night before or the week before or whatever,
Right. Right.
right? As long as you know and are comfortable with that knowledge.
I guess my final point on this is we're trying to train for the real world. And honestly, being able to stand up there and explain the project is the bare minimum. For these big projects that have 3, 5, 10, 12 gigantic, amazing, popular firms come in, and you just stand up, and I feel is doing a disservice not focusing incredibly on it, because I mean, I struggled a bunch for my own reasons, but my biggest struggle was watching people not be able to talk, which is also my biggest struggle, but like being able to explain anything and sound any kind of intelligence. I mean, obviously that's a pretty broad brush. There are a bunch of amazing stuff also, but in the extreme of it being poorly communicated, often the student was not coached up on how to communicate effectively. Often they were berated over the lack of whatever. Often substance, but
Totally,
you know,
totally agree on that point. And I like you're spot on. Like that's stuff that needs a stronger focus, I think, in academia, right? It goes back to that moment of that that we discussed earlier of like jury being when you sell your product. That's like when you make the sale, and we don't boil it down to that moment in school, right? Like really, like I would love to have had a studio where the professor was just kind of like, okay, this is the product we're making this semester. You need to sell it at the end of the semester. These are the materials you need to sell the product to your client, right?
right,
It's very literal.
right,
But I think we romanticize so much in academia that that literal element would really benefit a lot of people at times, because I think a lot of people kind of come in and are hit with so much romanticism that it's kind of overwhelming, and you just get stuck in this like ephemeral plane of like, I don't know what I need and what I don't need and how I need to be talking about this, and I'm throwing a lot of archy speak
right.
words out when really I need to
Architectonic.
just, yeah, it's like I just really need to kind of like dumb it down a little bit and just be simple, straightforward, and discuss the product for the clients and the user.
Interesting. And that seems to be really where you thrive, frankly, because I haven't seen any like actual architecture, but I've spoken about it a bunch. And I've heard a bunch from you, and it's clear that speaking and that ability to get that point across concisely and in a way that I want to hear your answer, because your answer also isn't always mine. I mean, often there's things we agree on, but you've thrown a lot of different curve balls from your backstory to mindset, and in and that's really put you in this job now, combined with that skill set to actually take that big control of your career from that classroom, rather than just being like, oh, thank God I'm in this horrible job in a place I would never want to be in, but here we are. And in that, like, almost ask that interview question of, in 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, what are you aiming at? Like, as far as you've come now, obviously all of us have our own personal struggles, but you're in an extremely positive place, and finding a thing that you, but also I understand that it's still a job, and it's learning that profession more than it being school, and being able to bring that thing to actual life. And it's just so interesting how many of us want to have our own paths but end up at firms forever. But like, what do you see for yourself, whether it's the size and scope of the office, or just how you want that life balance to be? Because, or even a little before the future, like, are you finding proper balance now and able to I be pushed and pulled properly?
I think that, the balance now is something that I'm still kind of like working through as I kind of shift habits and like behavior patterns post school, right? We've talked in the past how like school is always on, right? Like school never turns off. It's not like work
Right.
where like you hit a deadline and then like you gotta wait a week or two for a client to make a
Right.
decision. You can like breathe a little bit and you're at a point where it's like, okay, well, I can't start another project because this could pick up at any moment, but I also don't really have much to do. That doesn't happen at school. School, like you hit your deadline, it's like, okay, now here's the next deadline. And those moments exist professionally, but you get pause, right?
Right.
And so with school, like you hit the weekend and like the weekends, like you still got stuff to do over the weekend.
Right.
With work,
Right.
it's
Like,
like I'll
right.
occasionally have stuff over the weekend with work. Like I just worked this past weekend. It was like 5 hours to like get some stuff together because we were coordinating
Right.
some professional renderings with a visualization studio,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah,
And
it's a
they
lot.
work through the weekend. So
Yeah.
I put in time this weekend to ensure that we could get what we wanted for our product, right?
Right.
But simultaneously, it's like, okay, well, like if I know I'm going to have a weekend like that, I'll soften my hours earlier in the week, or I'll take time out in the next week to kind of balance it a little bit, right? Like I am happy to put in a little bit of extra time, and I think like right now on average I'm probably working like 50-hour weeks.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
like that can feel like a lot, but it also doesn't feel like a lot most of the time, right?
Right.
Because one, like I really enjoy what I'm doing. And
That's
like
amazing.
that's a super, super critical thing. Like you gotta be happy doing what you're doing for work. Like everybody will always say like work is not your life and your life is not work, and it's not. But you spend 2,080 hours a year doing it. You better fucking love what you're doing. Because it will be a miserable existence to go 2,000 hours a year doing something you dislike, right? And so like at least right now, I'm sure I'll hit burnout at some point, right? Like it seems to happen to everybody, but I'll fight it as much as I can until then. But
PTO.
I enjoy PTO. uh, Travel, go see my, go camping, enjoy all the things. Like
Right.
that's
Right.
that's the critical part of the balance. But it's like if I do a 50-hour week and like I know I've got a soft week coming up, then like okay, I'll put in like 35 hours.
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
it's
And that's incredible that you can find that balance now in this firm, because it's okay, there's 10 extra hours, we can put you over here, over here, over here, over here, and they don't even see, oh yeah, he pulled an extra 10 back here, and or they might see it but like expect it, or oh, he was slower, and they're real production houses. And so like this sounds like quite a long-term fit in terms of like project types. Like you spoke on mixed use, like what are you really trying to aim at now that school's over and there isn't like, okay, a hard deadline, yeah, being licensed, but that also takes a long time as well, and it's more like a PhD of like you'll get to it on like your personal time. And once that happens, it opens up many other doors, because you spoke about maybe 10 to 20 American cities, but if you're willing to go abroad, being licensed is a specialized skill that can carry weight and make it easier to immigrate rather than just being a bartender, and that's just the reality, of,
Oh yeah, totally.
yeah,
A lot of countries, like if you are looking to immigrate to like a European country, for instance, a Western European or Northern European country, like you need a a lot require a PhD, or a handful require a PhD, a lot require a master's, but they require like skilled, high level, high
right,
education level labor. And so it can be difficult to migrate to some of those countries. Me personally, I had a lot more interest in that when I was younger. I'm nearing the back end of 32 at this point,
you're so old,
and
bro. I'm 30. Jeez,
so old.
yeah.
We're getting up there, man.
Yeah, oh my god.
We've only lived like 30% of our life.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But
Um,
you were saying,
maybe less.
yeah,
But I don't know. Now I've got nieces and like, you know, young family members coming in, and my siblings are kind of dispersed in the DFW area, and like it would be fun to go live in another country a lot of the time, and I think I
right,
would definitely still consider it in some ways. But at the same time, like the more comfortable thought is like, okay, well, I could move to like one of the coasts. Like I would love to move up to like Seattle or
yeah,
like Vancouver or something like that. Like the
yeah,
Pacific Northwest is gorgeous. Um, and like that is like a 4-hour flight from my family. So if like God forbid something tragic happens and I've got to be with my family, I can do it pretty
right,
quickly rather than like flying across the world.
right.
Uh, but it
That's a
also allows
great
me to
point.
be in a position where like I can make it for like my niece's birthdays, you know,
Right, exactly,
like
bro.
just like the small yearly stuff.
Bro, I've been gone since graduation in 2019, and it's brutal missing all that stuff. Like, I'm trying like to balance it all out, and but that's its own discussion. But
Yeah,
for
you don't
you,
realize those things like
I
before you
am
do it
now.
though, right? Like
Yeah,
you're so excited to get out and see and explore and try things. And like again, like this last round of interviews, I was interviewing with firms in Seattle,
wow,
and
nice.
firms elsewhere, right? It's like like I've looked down in Austin, I've looked in Denver, I've talked to firms in both of those cities as well.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like I would still love, and like I would still absolutely consider that. Like my next round of interviews, like I'll do the same thing.
right,
Um, but like the older I get, the more I'm like, I actually would really love to be able to capture those important moments with, my parents, my siblings, my
right,
nieces, because like those, even though they're frequently in the sense that they happen once a year, like you don't get those back, right? Like you miss those are gone,
right.
and when you first get out, like you have that excitement, you want to explore and you want to go and like check things out, and you absolutely should. But I think that desire to kind of like capture those more temporal, important moments, it gets back to you for sure.
Mm, Right. I definitely knew leaving for myself, I knew I was jaded to all of it. I was at it all the time, and it worried me with the older people in my life, not older, but older like friends, and apparently how they got jaded or just like kind of faded out and weren't as involved, and like I have a gigantic appreciation for any game I can make, any birthday, anything, because they're too few and far between. But also, like I would love to think I would have had that same appreciation if I stayed, but I mean, I don't know. And a part of me knew like going would build that, and it's driven me towards my main professional goal, I think, is building that sense of community back up in all different kinds of facets, because yes, it is proximal, but it's also via tech, like yo
Looks like it's coming
should be
back.
coming back online. Yeah. I know it is midnight there. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I won't end it just immediately because that's just like too abrupt. Just okay, bye. Because I really want to like take a moment of just reflecting on the whole journey, because we've gone through a bunch of it. You could probably write many more books on it, but in yeah, but in the main highlights of growing up first small town, and then as a junior going from 400 people or 40 people to 400 people as a senior, going from programming to here's AutoCAD, that's the same, right? Like yeah, but then being like, oh, I'm gonna take
all these classes to finding a class that then puts you in front of the mayor of Rockwall to actually show an idea for a school expansion, which might have been just a way to get cheap labor, but that's another thing. No, but it happens like that. Like teachers ask their students for help on things, and then oh yeah, I'm gonna use that help actually, But if it was a solid, plan, and the main thing is if they had cash for it, they potentially could have built it or at least given credence to that idea and being in that moment in that space, it was like, oh wait, this actually feels real, and it felt like that propelled you even more so. But it was kind of a flustered start. Let me switch this battery. This has been a 3 battery show, but I don't know how long this one has. I've been meaning to snag the pass through, but I just haven't yet. But this battery isn't much either. But to it was a crazy start also because it was not even off the rails, and you fail out not once, not twice, but thrice, and have to basically go to or go to community college and then basically plead with Cheryl like, hey, I really want to do this. I promise. I promise. And it's amazing to have that kind of resolve and to be in it actually and push on through. All the while you got your first job after failing out the first time, then a job at a plant or a steel fabricator, and then it's like just other jobs, because when you are in community college, you can't really have a legit job, like those often aren't hand in hand in the same person,
No, no.
exactly. But then pushing on through and starting at UTA and pushing all the way through with one gap year, but that really brings us to now, and we have a lot of parallels. We have a lot of differences for sure, but that focus of architecture and architecture school, it helped me reframe my mind and mindset. It seemed it helped reaffirm yours. Am I out of bounds there?
No, I think that's a very apt analysis.
Yeah.
I think that's a very apt analysis.
Well, I spent about like an hour begging, like, "Hey, what made you this way?" And it's like, "It's just who I am, bro." And that if that's the answer, that's the answer, And and often that is more unique than not, because many people have to be molded into different roles, hopefully by choice or by enjoyment, but it seems that there's almost no other kind of role and job that can challenge you in the ways that you need to keep on pushing. And it really sounds from all the people I've spoken to that this firm sounds incredible, and it's a great spot to be in for overall balance, but also being in that design team is the most crucial part, because this early on, because yeah, you're old, you're 32, blah blah blah. No, you're not. You just graduated. You're 22, or 24, It's like overall, it's it's humbling because like, hey, I'm 30. I was in school with babies, I'm sure you felt that even more. I was like these
Oh
people aren't
yeah.
my friends. They're so young, but then
Yeah.
they're all my friends now.
Yeah.
So yeah, like,
It's a funny balance for sure.
bro, that is not a story I expected. Came in with, well, I don't really know him in the details, so I'm just really interested. And bro, that's a wild and honestly inspiring story, because I'm sure we can spend a bunch of time on those like deep lows and pushing through them, but speaking about how many you went through and just keep on pushing, that is inspiring as can be. And really, I'm almost at a loss of words, because like it's pretty incredible, bro. And I think you should
Right.
like have a moment and like I mean the ego's there, so maybe you don't need that moment.
The ego's there. The ego's
Yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly. But in a humbling way, like it is like I you could have just been in that town, joined the fucking Marines, and then fucking die. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
Like there's very tragic stuff out there, and honestly, that's very tragic. But there's even more. So coming back to being blessed, it hit me when you said our job is of luxury, because it's something that really bothers me. And it really bothers me about the modernists. Like, they spoke against this shit so much. And then, what is every expensive house? Oh, am I frozen on you?
No, you're all good here. Your
Oh,
stream.
but it's all good. I'm still recording it on the
Okay, good, good.
yeah, yeah. But it is like quite a story, bro. And yeah, I don't know why it's paused, but like that is not the point. The point is more so this story, because I found in school there were so many different kinds of people. It was the most diverse space, racially, yes, but stories, people's backgrounds were so different. And that's
Oh
really
yeah.
what's crucial. And people having many, like, no, I'm from a small town. Well, you're going to have different opinions off the bat about, or not even opinions, different frames of viewing things and aims
Yeah.
in life. Opinions aside about whatever, like that comes and goes as the facts come out, but how stuff is even viewed, and going from that small to big school probably ended up doing a service of having it as a kid, rather than, okay, I'm an adult now and here's the big city, like that's probably even potentially worse.
Oh, absolutely. Like again, like you made a comment on, kind of trying to find like that pivotal moment or that epiphany moment. And like like architecture school, kind of like a reaffirming self, right? And I think that all kind of stems from that, you know. I think on the side of it, kind of reaffirming self, it is not that it necessarily reaffirmed, but it challenged, right? It challenged
Mm,
to reaffirm, and for like those moments in there of like feeling challenged, it's like, okay, well, like I've got to live with myself for the rest of my life. I
right.
can do these things now and be better for the rest of my life, or I can complain and hate that I didn't do them, do something else, and probably regret it, and then I can live with the regret for the rest of my life. But on the side of like the pivotal epiphany moments, it's again, man, like I feel like despite the trials experienced along the way, I'm so incredibly fortunate and lucky to have the opportunities that I've had. Um, you know, it's funny because I don't consider myself a lucky person when it comes to chance. right? Like if I like go gamble, I will lose that money every single time. Like every fucking time. Like if it is a game of chance, I lose 99% of the time, probably more. Well, when it comes to timing and opportunity, I am so grateful for how lucky I am. And the
Mm.
biggest part of that is the people that have drugged me along, the people that have had patience and made space for me, the people that have
Mhm.
humbled me, the people that have helped me, the people that have showed me the way. Like those people, every single one of those people are the pivotal moments. Every single one of those people
Mm.
are the epiphany moments because every
Mm.
single one of them, great or small, is the moment that drove impact that made me self-analyze and say, this is what I need to do.
So beautifully said, and that's it speaks like quite deeply to myself because I find myself on that mission to then try and be that person for others, but how they need it, not how I think they need it, and that's like the trickier part. And at least professionally, I'm trying to break it down through practices and even through these convos, us showing the stuff we go through personally is also a way of being there for others because you can't, uh, you can only affect so many people in the moment, put it that way. And that is the most important part of it. But having a broader and longer impact also, it has to be able to hit kind of in a one on one or a like a book, you know. I those words were written long ago by a ghost, you know, and they speak to you.
They do. I think like you're saying, you can't help others unless you're helping yourself, right?
Mhm.
And past that, sometimes you can't help others unless you show them vulnerability of yourself,
Hmm.
right? Like there are people, quite a few people that will not show you humility or vulnerability or even need for help
Yeah.
unless you can show them that vulnerability first. And I think as architects, we often are in a position where we have the opportunity to help. And I think a lot of us want to help. We want to create better environments, right?
That's beautifully said.
And a big driving factor of us being able to do that is being able to show our vulnerabilities and take ownership for our own shit so
Right.
that we can help others figure out theirs and make it better.
Amen. And that's honestly the aim of my life and this whole small project here in a way of hopefully starting that community of growth through that us sharing our more vulnerable experiences, which is really our failures for most people because it's like, no, I never fail. It's like, okay.
But if you're not failing, you're not growing, you're not learning.
Right. And
If you don't fail, you're static. You don't change. You don't become this greater being that you're destined to become.
e- exactly. And all of us can communicate at a much quicker level, but it's not as deep. And I'm hoping to kind of combine the two and provide some depth and structure to this kind of unknown of post grad because in our realm, it really depends who you are, but also the firms you choose to be a part of because you can really be stuck in some places that make you forget that whole romantic side, which kind of has to be, look, I made this thing, you know, because being able to do much more than that is very difficult unless you can write books really well or speak really well, which I'm trying, but I can't.
Yeah, yeah. It's work. It's work.
Yeah,
And I know, I spent a lot of time dogging on academia and the romantic side of things, but I don't want to leave things with the impression that that stuff isn't important either,
of
right?
course not. It's crucial.
That is I think in a lot of ways driving force, right? That is the
Right.
inspiration, that is motivation, right? Like we romanticize to desire, right? Like
Mm,
they're almost hand in hand. Like desire and romanticism are really hand in hand in a lot of ways.
that's
And
a great
it's
point.
important to have those qualities. Like I love the romantic side of architecture. I love this ephemeral, theoretical, conceptual plane that we all like really want to exist and operate in a lot of the time. It's so much fun. It is such
Yeah.
a cool thing that we get to experience that so many other professions are devoid of.
Right. Right.
We just we have to tie it back to the product at times, and that's the part where like it sucks at moments, but both sides have positive and negatives to them.
Exactly. And often we can become quite jaded as we're like stepping way helps or having that variety in the job and that you can do some teaching and some learning and some production and some selling and but also if that's what you need because some people might think that's horrible, and it's really back to that self awareness. And I find through that journey of self that's where you can begin to pick apart and understand or reaffirm oneself. And well, Brian, this has been an incredible discussion, and I just thank you so much. It is like what 12, 15 over there.
Yeah, it's 12:20 here.
Hey, that's
Yeah,
what's
man,
up.
thank you so much for
Absolute
having me
pleasure.
on, for having the one-on-one.
Yeah,
This has been a really enjoyable and enlightening experience. So thank you for the platform and thank you for taking the time.
thank
I
you,
appreciate it and I've enjoyed having it.
bro.
We'll have to swap
Thank
roles
you.
at some point to get you on the other
Yeah,
side for this.
exactly. Somebody has to interview me. I don't know, like, because that's basically been the end of each. Well, I'm like, okay, who's gonna, and it's like, well, I can't really interview myself. I mean, I could, but no, like that'd be boring. But
It,
yes, yes. I have like at least five to 10 others I really want to do, but I'm also all open, But it's been an absolute pleasure, Ryan. And are you coming on Sunday to the student reviews?
I'm going to try to make that. I don't think I have anything on my calendar right now.
Mm, Legit.
So I am
Well,
not. Yeah, I'm open right now, so I'm hoping to make that. I've got to get some yard work and stuff done around the
right,
house.
right.
Um, just
It's at like
neglecting
5, I
things
think,
that
or
need to be
7,
done.
I think.
So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm hoping to kind of knock that stuff out early so that I can be present for the student ones. I think those will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so. Uh, Also, you are always welcome, and again, thank you oh so much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, thank you again.
Have a good night.
You as well.
Deuces.